Hi guys, and welcome to the Make the Transition event. So this is a recording of the edited version of the live event that we did in Bromsgrove on the 21st of January. This presentation is for anyone that is looking to grow and scale their driving school. So of course, to grow your driving school, you're going to need two things. First of all, you're going to need a system in place to attract new trainees or ADIs, and you're going to need a system in place to keep them busy once you have them. And predominantly that's sort of where, those are really the only two factors. Yes, there are a lot of things that go around that, but they were the main two factors: being able to recruit PDIs, trainees, and being able to keep them busy. And that's what we're going to be looking at in this presentation. Okay, so the agenda for the day is first of all taking a look at your current situation. Are you currently a sole trader? Do you already have some trainees, and do you already have some franchisees? Then we're going to go quite deep and have a look at your goals that you've set out for 2019. Now, it could be that you haven't actually set any goals yet, so great, you're in the correct place. Then a goal planner that's going to help you to achieve that. Then we're going to take a look at your headspace, because when you make the transition from independent to driving school owner, there is a lot of things that need to happen, and a lot of those things will take place in your head, and it's all to do with the way you think and the way you assess things. We're going to look at the current direct mail templates. Now, this is based on the fact that I already have a predictable selling system for recruiting PDIs stroke trainees into my training program, of which many of you guys follow. So we're going to look at the direct mail templates to make sure that you're actually using the most up-to-date ones, because of course they are absolutely vital in the whole process. Then we're going to have a look at books to interviews. So this is, again, following my predictable system. How many books are getting requested, what the ratio is from you sending books out to actually getting yourself some interviews. And we're going to sort of look at the reasons why some do extremely well at this and others do less well, and as to what those reasons may be. And we're going to have a look at the interview process and have a deep walkthrough of how you interview people, because of course I can control many things, but I really don't know what you guys are doing when you get someone in front of you and you're having to interview them. And we just want to cover that off to make sure that you're on course and you're not missing anything out. And within that interview process, there will be lots of things in there that I would regard as massive selling points that's going to set you aside from your competitors. And the main reason we're doing that, of course, is to avoid the price issue. We want to make it so it's impossible for any prospect that you meet to price match you, because you're offering something different. So big point. Okay, so once you've recruited your trainee and they've done the training, and then they emerge as a fully qualified ADI, of course you're going to bring them into your driving school as a franchisee. And we're going to look at your onboarding process and taking control. So how do you actually deal with that? How do you bring them on board? Do you do any additional training or ongoing training with them? And how do you basically run the whole system? Because again, very, very important. Then we're going to take a look at new customer acquisition and predictable selling systems for actually recruiting new learner drivers now that are going to obviously keep your franchisees busy. Because if you've done all the hard work to get them and you don't keep them busy, then they're probably going to leave. And you need predictable selling systems. And the ones we're going to focus on today, first one surrounds Google Ads, the new Google Ads that have recently been introduced, and also the way we use Facebook promotions, which is a little different to what most probably do. Now, during the actual live event itself, we wrapped up with, I think it was about 90 minutes in the end, of Q&A. And that's where some of the questions were coming to me. and some of the questions were going to Lee as the trainer, anything training related. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to do that during this presentation, simply because we don't have a live audience anymore. But anyway, without further ado, let's dig in and we'll get started. Okay, so we kicked the day off then with looking at everyone's current situation. So we had 16 of our members present in the room, along with myself and Lee, who was obviously my trainer. And we used the flippy board, and we basically went through everyone in the room and we had a look at their current situation. And if I remember correctly, the best performing member had something in the region of 4 franchisees and 5 PDIs in his system. So clearly he was the superstar on the day because he was the most advanced. At the under end of the scale, we had a couple of people in the room that were on 0 trainees and 0 franchisees. They're yet to embark on that journey. And of course, everyone else was somewhere in between 0 and, possibly 4 trainees and 5 franchisees, or the other way around. And that was quite useful because obviously I'm in a position where I'm probably, I'm actually quite a bit advanced on all that. And sometimes, although you may aspire to be in the same situation I'm in some cases it was easier to focus on the member present that's sitting there with 4 franchisees and 5 PDIs, because that's probably a lot easier for you to relate to. And what he does is follow us very, very closely, and in fact almost to the letter, I think. So therefore that's a good indication of what I'm about to present to you. If you were to follow that equally as closely, then of course there's no reason why you wouldn't achieve the same results. And then of course him himself is then looking to take that next step to get up where we currently are. And that's the way it works. Okay, so we jotted all that down so everyone could see it, and we were just establishing really that everyone was in the correct place. Now, the one thing to absolutely stress here is to recruit. To grow your driving school, you have to recruit help. And I'm not going to cover off here today how you recruit qualified ADIs, because as you probably know, I don't actually do that anymore. And I haven't done it now for over 3 years, simply because they're too troublesome for me and they just don't seem to want to follow the system. So I'm not really going to get into that. This is all about recruitment of trainees, PDIs, that you're going to train and clone yourself. So the first step when you grow your driving school is obviously to make sure that you've got a firm foundation and good customer base yourself, and you ought to be in a position really where you're turning work away. So clearly then you need some help. And to recruit PDIs, trainees, you're going to need a predictable selling system to do that. And by predictable selling system, it does what it says on the tin. So when you turn that system on, it's going to be predictable in the amount of new trainees that it attracts and the amount that it actually costs you to acquire them. That's a predictable selling system. And I've been running my own predictable selling system now for many, many years. And of course, that is the one that I'm going to share with you. However, there were several people in the room that either don't follow mine exactly or have some variation of it. And I think some had a completely different system, and that's absolutely fine. So I'm not saying you have to follow mine, but I'm going to use mine, of course, as the basis. And then it's up to you to suck in the information and do with it as you wish. Half the people in the room were on a managed service. So that means, of course, that we're managing their complete recruitment predictable selling system for them. But I need to stress that this is not aimed at people that are on a managed service. It's for everyone. So it doesn't really matter what situation or what selling system you're using, only to the point that you actually do need to use something that is predictable. Okay, so let's take a look then at my own predictable selling system. Now, I've had this in place for, about 7 years, I think. It's extremely successful for me. And of course, I have, as you probably know, My oldest son Lee is my trainer. He runs my entire training program, and he's on a salary, so I need to keep him busy. And this is the system that I do that. But of course, it's not all about keeping him busy. It's about actually growing my own driving school. So here are this is great timing, obviously, in January when this event was held, because we can look back now at the stats for 2018. And you will see here what I've blanked out in yellow, what I've highlighted in yellow. And the reason I've done that is because those were my two really big spends. There was another one in December, not quite as high. And I'll just give you the logic behind that. So what I did in January 2018, I did lots and lots of testing, about 8 or 9 different campaigns, whether that be conversion, engagement, traffic. I tried different budgets. I tried different images. I tried all sorts of things. So I did actually spend quite a lot of money during that testing. Now, on the one hand, I could view that as I did actually waste a lot of money, because a lot of campaigns just didn't work. Some worked extremely well and some really didn't work at all. But that's the whole process of testing. So I don't really view it as that I was wasting my money. I view it that I was buying data. And you'll see as we go through this presentation, boy, was that investment ever a sound one. But to begin with, we test it on your behalf as members, and I test it using my money, not yours. So, and then you can benefit from the results. So that's sort of the whole point. So I did that in January 18, and in a moment I'll cover off, exactly what those tests were and the results. But then again in November 18, I did the same thing. I did another bunch of testing. And then the big spend for December, that wasn't so much testing. That was then blasting out my own campaign on the back of what I'd learnt. So it's quite important to understand that. So these two here were testing, but this one was definitely not testing. This one was now putting everything into place because the testing had now been completed. And now it's a case of let's put this bad boy to work and see what results that we get. Okay, so just to cover off then the testing and changes that I did. So again, going back to January 2018, I tested 9 separate campaigns, and I've already said traffic, engagement, Facebook leads, conversions, you name it, I tested it. And we run with that for most of 2018 until we got to October. In October, we made quite a significant change, as it turned out, and we introduced the new 3D book graphic. Now, before we used the graphic, but it was sort of a flat book cover. I got a 3D one made up, and we added that to all of the campaigns. And again, there was an immediate increase in conversion in book requests. So clearly that was something that was working very well. In November 18, what happened then was it wasn't down to what we were doing, it was what Facebook were doing. And without going too deep, what's actually been happening over the last 4 years of Facebook, as you can imagine, Facebook have a monumental computer system based all around the world. And experts believe that it takes time for computers to actually digest and read and understand things. And of course, what happens with Facebook, if you run an engagement campaign, basically what they're just trying to do is find people that will engage, not necessarily convert. If you run a traffic campaign, then what Facebook do is send people, they look for people that are most likely to click on your ad and go to your website. So the two are quite different. But conversion is a different thing altogether. Now, before you can even start to run a conversion campaign, you actually do need quite a lot of data. Because the way this works is that you're sort of saying to Facebook, look at my previous results, look at what's been happening, and can you actually go out for me and find lookalike people that are likely to convert and, in this case, ask for a book request or put in a book request. So this is what conversions are all about. So what I actually did is that I looked back at my Aweber account, and in there at the time I had 244 people that had actually opted in and requested a book. So I downloaded that file of all 244. I then loaded them up to Facebook Business Manager and put them in a new audience. Now again, don't let this sort of get to you too much. I'm just explaining to you basically what's happening. So you load up this audience of 244 people. Now, as you may or may not know, Facebook have around 150 information fields on everybody that has a profile. It's quite scary, and most people don't actually know this. They have a vast amount of information. They know the type of websites you visit. They know what's in your profile, obviously. They know what sort of things make you tick. They monitor everything you do on your Facebook page. So they have a very, very good idea of what you're all about. And in fact, digressing slightly, it's well known now that employers, when they're looking to employ staff, one of the first things they do now is check them out on Facebook, because that gives them a far more comprehensive background on that individual than an interview is ever going to do. So it's scary stuff in one way, but extremely powerful for us that are trying to do marketing. Anyway, so we load this custom audience up, and Facebook now have just completed the 4-year cycle, and now their computers have enormous computing power, and they're able to produce lookalike audiences. So out of that 244 people that I loaded up, I then say to Facebook, can you go off now and try and produce for me a lookalike audience? So they will go out in the whole of the UK and they will match the criteria from those 244 people, and then they will produce a lookalike audience of people with similar characteristics and behavior. So when you think about this, why this is so powerful is because now, instead of sending these ads out to just about everybody, we're now asking Facebook to find these people that are far more likely to opt in and request a book, and only send it to them. I mean, I'm probably struggling to get this point across to you, but this is massive. This is a massive progression. And not only have Facebook have now cracked this learning process, Google have also done the same, which I'll come on to a bit later. But for now, you just need to understand that that is a major, major step forward, and it's obviously going to increase conversions. So there you go. They're basically uploaded Facebook contacts from Aweber that had requested the books, 244. So I've sort of covered that one off. And what Facebook actually did, you can see here, they produced a lookalike audience based in Great Britain, obviously, based on my Aweber book request list. They then made this custom audience, and in the space of just a few days, they turned that 244 into an audience of 410,000 people that are likely to want to opt into my book. Now, you don't target the UK, you still target your own local area. So you're targeting a percentage of those people, but they're far, far more likely to end up in qualified leads. And then the final change that we did was in December 2018, and we changed the targeting demographic, and we removed the 25 to 35 age group. And the reason we did that is because when I sat down and looked at my statistics, I see that during 2018, I actually had 17 interviews, and I converted 12 of them to sign-ups, which I was extremely delighted, because my target was only 6 for the whole of 2018. I actually ended up with double that at 12. But when we look at the conversion rate, so the under 35 category, I only had 2 interviews and I had 1 conversion. So, a conversion 50% is actually not bad. But that's not the point. The point is that what I found out is that the under 35, so from 25 to 35 demographic, they're the ones that request the most books, but they're the least likely to attend an interview or to convert. So arguably, we're wasting a lot of books. Not all, I've still made a sign up, 2 interviews and still 1 sign up. But, we made the decision that we'd be better off not targeting them because it's just costing too much money and too many wasted books for such a small conversion. If we then take a look at the 35 to 60 demographic, 14 interviews and 10 conversions, that's a 71% conversion rate. I like those figures far more. So you can see where we're going with this and why it makes much more sense to target that demographic. And then, of course, the over 60s, again, they don't actually request that many books. How many of them are on Facebook, is another matter. But actually, I did 1 interview and 1 conversion. So when you look at it that way, it was 100% conversion rate. And the person we signed up is doing extremely well. I mean, it was 61. So hopefully you can see why we're doing that. So now we've taken out that 25 to 35 and we're now only targeting over 35. And of course, that is going to make a significant difference in conversion rate. Now, the result of all those changes that happened during 2018. So if I look back at January, the cost to acquire a new trainee was actually costing me on average £332.80. Now, after all the testing that we did during the year, the cost to acquire a new trainee in January 2019 is actually dropped from £332.80. It is now £258.84 to be exactly precise. So that's like £70 thereabouts. We've reduced the cost of acquiring a new trainee by £70. So that's why we do our testing. And that's why I said at the beginning, I don't view, when I spent £700-800, I don't view that as wasted money. I view that as buying data. I'm testing for the long term. And of course, I'm now saving £70 to acquire a trainee. So, I think that was well justified. Now, you may look at that and think, crikey, it's costing nearly £260 to acquire a new trainee. That's a lot of money. But is it? Because if you look at the full picture, a new trainee, so if you sign up 1 new trainee and that costs you £260 to do that, a new trainee lifetime value, based on being 2 years in a franchise, comes out at £10,697. Now, of course, that will differ depending on what you charge them. Assuming that, of course, you're charging them the same as we do for the training, which is $3,497. And if you're charging them the same as we charge them as a franchisee, which is on average about $300 a month, it's $268 plus customer referrals. So on average, it's going to be about $300 a month. And assuming that they stay with you as a franchisee for a period of 2 years, then that is the value. So the return on investment for £258 over a 2-year period is £10,697. So, this, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Headspace as we go through the presentation, but this is the figure that you need to have firmly fixed in your head when you're trying to acquire, especially your first trainee, because, you almost view it as hemorrhaging cash. You keep spending out on ads, you keep sending books out, you may get in interviews, and until you actually get your first sign up, you need to take that leap of faith, because there is money going out. But to build a business, there has to be an element of risk and there has to be an element of investment. You can't do it otherwise. But you've got to have that firmly planted in your head that that's the cost to acquire them. And when you then sign up, that is the potential value. Of course, they may stay far longer than 2 years. I mean, I've had franchisees been with me since 2007. But very few actually leave before, I would say, 18 months. Okay, so hopefully that's made that one clear. Okay, so that sort of wraps up this first section of the presentation, all to do with this testing and changing. It's talking about the predictable selling system that I use and that I've used now for 7-8 years, whatever it is. I've done so much testing on it to actually get the acquisition cost down, and you can see that's been paying off for me. And now as we go forward in January 2019, I'm in a much better place now, because I've managed to save on the costs, investment, and that's going to reap dividends for me going forward. And I'm going to cover all that off later in the presentation. But for now, in this first section, it was just important to set the scene, why you need a predictable selling system. As I said, you don't have to use mine. You can pinch the data from it. You can set up your own, or you can follow the one that we use. Entirely up to you. But hopefully that's put you in the picture and set the foundation for the rest of the presentation. Okay, catch you in the next one.